everyone. Thank you, everyone at Gold, and for sponsoring and supporting Bittu, which completely jolted me into a state of great aliveness and humor and recognition that this was really extraordinary cinema being made by a young and new director. And I was so happy to meet Karishma Dev Dubey and her extraordinary sister, who was the cinematographer of the film, Shreya Dev Dubey. And I am delighted to present today, I call them the dynamic duo, the sisters, the Dev Dubey sisters, Karishma, the writer and director of Bittu. Welcome, Karishma, and thank you ever so much for this blazing light of Bittu that shows us so much about the resilience of the human spirit, but also about how you, as a director, plumbed right into understanding the beating heart of a rebellious child, a badass chick, something I think you are, and may I also present in that same words, Shreya, your lovely sister, whom I know and I have worked with, the lovely cinematographer Shreya Dev Dubey, who shot and produced Bittu with you. And congratulations really for not just winning the DGA award for the best student film, but also now being shortlisted for the Oscar. And I think this should be your year. But welcome to Bittu, and I'd love to talk about really how you made it, how you thought about it. First, can you make your own introductions, please? And then we'll jump into the making of the film. So please, Karishma, tell us the beginnings.
Thank you for doing this, Meera. This is so exciting. A year ago, if someone told Shreya and I that this would be happening because of Bittu, we would be just laughing. It was a really small film. We kind of made alone on a mountain somewhere. It really has found a home in so many different places that are so unexpected, and it's kind of amazing that it's come to this point of speaking to you, which is amazing. I'll let Shreya introduce herself and talk a little bit, and then I can go into how this film actually happened.
Hi, Meera.
Hello, Shreya.
So good to see the both of you because you're in a different country as I am. But yeah, I can't believe it. We're here, and Bittu's had such an incredible journey so far, and I'm just so glad it's getting so much love because it was made with such such a incredible team, a forceful team on the mountain somewhere, and I'm just glad it's actually seen by so many people.
I just wanted to know, Karishma, whether when you began to make it, and I know it was part of your thesis film, correct? At NYU, you were graduating and you had to make a short film, correct?
That's right. I actually started writing it we had something called the second year film, which the program is designed around. It's the first time you can go home and shoot something because the production time is 2.5 weeks. So I started writing it around then, but it just wasn't coming together on paper. And I knew the character from the very start. I knew the narrative structure I wanted to kind of place her in. But I think it was just it was always a little didactic because I was just so angry about this thing that had happened, the incident that it's based on, that I wasn't able to kind of embed the film in a way that felt like it was unfolding narratively in a way that I was comfortable with. So I kind of put it away, and I made another film, that Shreya produced as well, in Delhi. And then I came back to it when it was my thesis years at NYU, and I had 2 years to develop it, and the possibility of doing it with more resources because I had the time to run a fundraiser and all of that. And then, because I had it for so long, and I kind of lived with the material, and the characters became a little bit more familiar and had a little bit more intimacy with how I wanted to talk about this incident and what about it kind of stuck with me. It became a lot more about just the friendship between these two girls. And Shreya and I went to boarding school in India, which was one of the most foremost institutions of India, but had a lot of surprising overlaps with this simple government school. And I just, there was a lot of stuff that I had observed or experienced in the classroom culture that just kind of stuck with me. And Bittu just, her experience became this medium to detail all of these things that were swimming in my chest.
So did you begin knowing that you were going to make a portrait of two young girls, or did you begin inspired by the terrible incident of, you haven't mentioned it, but I suppose I could, right? Of a real incident of the lunches, children's lunches being poisoned by a terrible accident that killed several, that all of India and all of the world was shocked by at the time. So which was the trigger for you, the incident and the inhumanity and the injustice of it, or the children? I was just curious.
I think it's always kind of starts with the character for me and some loose like thematic thing that I'm trying to investigate. Two was the only reason I was like, oh, I could. It was my first film that I was writing and making that was outside of my lived experience in a sense, and I was nervous, but her character didn't. Would always bring me back to the material because it's really who I wanted to explore and kind of bring to life. The incident was very much the genesis of the film, but I think I was just angry at there was just so much media attention that there was too many images and too much footage that I had access to in the hospital, after the hospital, the aftermath of the poisoning. There were riots by the local community because they felt it was mishandled by the authorities. So there was like an image of the classroom after, like weeks after the poisoning, and the kids' stuff was just still lying around in the room. I think that image made it to the film as well. So it was just this anger towards our inability to protect like the most vulnerable part of our societies, and that theme just plays into the film in many small ways too before the poisoning itself. Like the opening is with the girls when they're like on the side of the street performing for these men with what was initially like really like promiscuous Bollywood songs, but we made it into Bhojpuri songs because actually the songs came from the lives of these girls that we were working with. It's just a part of their culture and they love it, but they're just unaware of the sexual theme that is like what makes this attractive to adults. So it's just the idea of these children kind of wandering unsupervised and the dangers that are in their life that they process and grow up with, however small or big. Most of the times you don't know the interaction your kid is having with the different adults because these kids also grow up with such a strong sense of independence and resilience.
No, I was just, people are asking many questions, so I'm just going to take that as a segue to ask you about the casting process. And I'm sure that in finding the amazing two young actors that you found, that I'm sure that also would impact what they said and how they sang and what, the curses, all that lovely foul-mouthed stuff. Did you work together with them, or did you? I was curious first about the casting, where you found them and how it impacted the actual story. The girls.
I mean, by the time I reached Delhi, I had written the film over 2 years, so I kind of knew the structure and the script was already a pretty strong draft. But I was. It was Shreya's idea to shoot it in the mountains because I wanted to move the narrative away from Bihar and kind of, challenge this assumption that we have of like tough stories coming out of these really specific kind of rural spaces in India. We wanted the girls who we would cast to have an inbuilt relationship already with each other and for us to have a relationship with the place, like the camera and the girls should have a relationship with the place. So Shreya suggested shooting close to Dehradun, which, it's where we both grew up and we just know the place so well that even if we had to like wing it, which we ended up doing a lot of on set, there were like rules and an intimacy that was already inbuilt to the place and with us. So I found this location through my line producer, Vinay Kumar. He was amazing. Like I'd been looking in Himachal, I couldn't find any place. And then I was like, maybe Uttarakhand is where I have to do it. And it was a little organic farm, which we converted into a government school. And once I knew we were shooting there, I just kind of moved there because very early on in the script, I knew I couldn't use professionally trained actors. I wanted to make a film with the community where we were shooting it. So if I'm honest, I didn't know what to do next. So I just started wandering around and going and introducing myself to like the communities and the villages. And I had a friend of mine, Nirvana Sani, who's an actor in Delhi, come down and we created like a theater workshop, which was just very basic theater exercises. And so we would just go and like hold these workshops for kids around the area. We did like a bunch of different groups and I went to government schools, which didn't really work out because like kids are a little bit more shy or there's like a performative element to them when teachers are around. So Rani kind of like emerged 2 weeks into the process. I think I just walked into one place 20 minutes away from location and she just like ran out of the little basti and she walks right up to me and she's like, what's up? You want to play? Like she knew, like, I guess if there's a lot of social workers and stuff that roam around. So she knows like there's these co-curricular activities just going to come up from somewhere. I said, yeah, let's play. So she disappeared for like 10 minutes and came back with like 25, 30 more kids. And so she was just like amazing, you know, like I remember sending Shreya a photo and she was visually a little different from what I had imagined, but it was like the first of that lesson. Yeah, it was the first of that lesson of being like, I've written the script. I know it's like kind of inside out, but the work then became just making and transferring my fictional world to the lives of these people and who this girl was. So I just kept going back every day and, you know, filming them and kind of upping the game for her. And she was just working lockstep with me. And she was just amazing. She was like a little actor.
Extraordinary fire, spitfire. And Shreya, you must have been involved with the visual design of the film right from the get-go. Were you always aware that it was going to be handheld or that it was going to take on the look it took, or did you also was that also a journey of finding that style?
I think definitely once I kind of witnessed Karishma's workshops and seeing what was happening on the ground with the kids and knowing Rani, and at the same time kind of watching her perform and not being able to kind of being confused about whether she's performing, is she playing Bittu or Rani, and the fact that I knew her so well, or at least a little bit, but still I was confused, was an incredible experience and was so inspiring that I said it's important for the audience to have the same kind of confusion. That we cannot have these incredible, very real performances and then shoot in a very stylistic, advertising kind of very well lit spaces. You have to kind of create this confusion of whether it's documentary, is she really, is it real, is it Rani, is Rani Bittu or not? So that was really incredible and exciting. So we really had to create this like bubble of trust where the camera really wasn't something that they looked at and they were really performing for the love of it and enjoying the process, you know. So that was, I think, why it became so, you know, kind of handheld, and we were just trying possibly everything to get the shot and, you know, not disturb the whole mood of what we'd created for them. And we didn't have, you know, it was a difficult location and also not many hours. So, yeah.
You had 6 hours a day, right? Because you were shooting children?
8 hours a day.
8 hours a day.
Yeah, but 6 hours shooting because yeah, sometimes they were, you know, like Shreya had said once, and it's so true, like the kids and the people, it was basically a whole cast of first-time performers, barring Saurabh, who played the teacher. But they were kind of at the forefront of every decision, like camera, but also like schedule and where should we shoot and how should we shoot, who should be on set. There were times when I just had to leave with the kids because we went over time a little bit and I just had taken responsibility of these children. So I wanted to be the one picking them up and dropping.
And the community trusted you, so you had to kind of drop parents, pick them up. And of course, with the kids came like 15 adults, you know. So it was quite something for 4 or 5 of us to be able to handle all that production on the mountains. But we managed. And
that sounds better than, you know, my film Queen of Katwe, which was with kids from the streets of Katwe, and Disney, who was financing the film, was seriously, you know, very careful about child labor laws. And when this Disney executive would walk onto our set, I knew it was like the Seven Seals, you know, the death was coming, and I had to get the shot. And sometimes he would literally lift the child in front of my camera and just take that child home. And it was like that, you know, shooting with children. It's amazing and unbridled, and they're so. When you choose the right kid, as you so much have done, it's possible to get that, but you really have to work fast before the night falls, or before the parent comes, or before the sepulchral head comes and takes it. But
but even she worked so fast. By the second, towards the end of the second day of shoot, Rani just kind of picked up like what was happening. She could tell like I was nervous about. Yeah, I was nervous about like hard drives because sometimes in the beginning we were like, you know, Shreya would just keep rolling because she was so great in front of the camera that I felt like everything should be, you know, filmed. So we went crazy rolling in the beginning and I would just keep making her do it. And then I was like, oh, we can't do that. So we started being a little bit more economical with our takes. And she kind of picked up on that too and just would save it for when the camera was rolling. And I don't know, she was just so astute in that way. Like it was kind of scary.
The most intelligent in terms of I remember in Salam Bombay, which was my first feature, which was also with street kids, how there were day players from Bollywood who would be the T-man or this one or that one, and how the kids would inform the day players, the professional actors, that this was out of continuity and I have to give you my tea with my left hand because in the next scene I am with my left hand. And they would like look at these, working class street children and get all uppity about it. But the kids are once you have that workshop and once you have that indoctrination, and they take one day to understand this filmmaking process, and then they're completely like your soldiers, isn't it? Did they often almost introduce you to new scenes or things that you hadn't scripted or seen or thought of?
Yeah, absolutely. Like like for instance, the song, the Bhojpuri song was like, they would sometimes not do rehearsals if I didn't play the song for them at the end of the rehearsal. And then everyone would just dance together. I had never heard these songs before, but I listen to it very often now because I totally get the vibe. So Shreya and I were like, well, there's no way we can't use this song because they just came alive, when it was their stuff, So we incorporated that into the film, but also, once Shreya came down and we just started filming her and just hanging out with her, showing her films and showing her the making of. And in the evening, like when her dad would come home and it was time for her to like help out and start, she has 4 other younger sisters. So she was the one who would always build the fire in her house. So when Shreya was filming her, she's like, this has to be in the film. Because I don't even remember anymore what she was doing instead of building the fire.
So but they would actually gather anything that was around them to make the fire, And I just couldn't get over how the 6-year-old was so good at it. And was so fearless at it. I said, this is incredible. And her tiny body would just shake when she would try to cut, break the logs. I was like, oh my God, I can't handle this. She's incredible.
One of the remarkable things for me in seeing Bittu was how politics came in through the back door, that in your story, it was Bittu, it was Rani, it was these kids who stole your heart with their antics and their mischief. And that shocking first scene when they're doing the Bhojpuri song number for the men, I thought something dark and peculiar would happen, but you build this world in a very nuanced way, in the way children are living it, rather than an imposition on your part. But then it's also in your casting of the school teacher and the school teacher's son and also the teacher himself. I really liked him and I know him from another film. It was also how the story and the politics and the extraordinary accident that happened comes unwittingly, like from behind. I loved that about it, that suddenly you think it's one thing, but it becomes this enormity of this other thing that afflict children and the underprivileged everywhere. Can you speak to us about that? I know you had the dramatic structure in your mind, but can you speak to us about how both of you actually made these filming choices to have this effect of almost being brought up from underneath somewhere, suddenly and beautifully?
For me, like writing it was the biggest challenge because I felt like for a long time it felt like 2 different films happening at the same time, but it also excited me, I guess, as a writer, to where they meet and stuff in the narrative.
Yes,
I was very sure that I wanted to move away completely from the incident as much as I could. It was more like a reimagination than like an investigative recreation of it. So I got very lucky that the 2 kids that I found to play it were Bihari. They belong to like a migrant laborer community in Uttarakhand, which is not the native. It's like from a different part of the country. They just come for work. But it was their state in Bihar where this poisoning actually took place. So the family knew about this thing. It happened like 3-4 villages away from them. So that was really nice how there was a sense of these kids being like outsiders, because that's very much a thing that happens in India. Like it happened for Rani a couple of times when I went to see her at her school. It was really weird because it was like our film was playing out in front of us. They would be standing in assembly before the school breaks up and they like tomorrow all the kids are going to come and do their math homework, and we're going to do the national anthem before this, and tomorrow Rani has to wash her face, otherwise she's not going to be allowed to sit in the class. Like, there was actually happening, but the scene was already written, and Rani would just like smile with like one ponytail here and the other one over here, but she would just like, she didn't care. She just loved to come to school. She loved to learn, she was so much like Bittu, but so much also like sharper in the classroom. It was really helpful to then cast the rest of the world with like local people, like all Pahadi people. Like, so there was this sense of like inherent, like a power dynamic that was already there, where like they teach, which also happens in different ways, even within the faculty, between the principal and the cook also, because that was something I preserved from the real incident, because the cook had actually brought it to the principal's attention saying, something's funky with the food. And she just didn't have the conversation, because it was like, I think it was coming from a place of ego, or, with authoritative figures, there's always this, I don't know, like, it's like a one-way street kind of conversation. Like, I've just said my piece and you can't speak anymore, which is what was not just like, Bittu was not the only victim of that kind of systemic negligence. It was also the teacher, it was also the cook. It was also the boy, the son, who was a shopkeeper, who just never had he was just too shy and kind of reticent to speak up, against his like dominant mother. And like these small like human things that happen everywhere somehow culminated in this horrible, careless mistake.
Exactly. There is a wonderful question come in. Can you please explain the creative choice of going handheld on camera? So Shreya, this one is for you, and it would be interesting to know whether if you had any other way that you were thinking, or that it was always going to be handheld right from the get-go.
We had, I think, like I spoke about it a little earlier, it was the easiest to be able to not kind of a lot of marks to the children and let them flow easily. So I would have to have to be free with the camera as well. But otherwise, we shot a few images on the tripod and but otherwise, not really. I think it kind of, we just flew with it really.
I mean, I remember there were times when Shreya just wanted to get close, and sometimes we'd be like, but aren't we too close? She's like, but we want to be with them, which was like one rule that we preserved and kind of found just working with each other, which was like, I think Shreya's instinct to stay present and keep rolling and stay close, where you feel like you're almost with them all the time. Yeah, I think that really affects the intimacy people think they have with the kids when they're watching.
Have the children seen the film? The children who are in the film?
They have, but so they don't really have like electricity where they live. So I played it for them on the phone, on my own laptop. And they only want to see the parts with the music and the parts in the classroom, especially because, I kind of rehearsed and worked with the other kids in the class separately, but I taught them the same games. So it was really nice, like, vibe when the two bunch of kids came together on our side and kind of found like a new community in each other. So they like to see their friends they haven't seen since set, and they like to see them dancing. I mean, also like, her whole community is in the film. Like everyone in the wedding procession are like Rani's chachi, chacha, cousins, mom, Renu's mom is in it. They're all in it. Like,
somebody is asking if they're curious if the children and the community are aware of the incredible response of the film and the impact of the film that it has had around the world. Do they know?
I think it's tricky. I think like the kids don't know that much, and I kind of prefer that. I spoke to her dad a little bit, and I said, you should just know that it's blowing up a little bit, and everyone recognizes her face, and and he seems like really chilled out. He's like, yeah, people keep calling me at night and saying, are you Rani's father? I said, how are they getting your number? I don't understand. But he's proud, the parents are very proud, and they can't, I don't think they understand the scope of it. Like the girls keep asking, I keep trying to explain what an Oscar shortlisted film means, or even with the Student Academy, where I was like, tumko sabse bada inam mila hai, like it's the biggest award you've got. And they just don't get it, which is, kind of lovely in its own way. But the parents are very proud, and they feel like it's their film too, So I've explained them the levels we are kind of at, and on the 15th the list is going to come out, so they're like doing their own little pujas and stuff at home.
And have you plugged in the film to create a social impact across India, in terms of just environmental awareness and
Of
things
course.
like that? Is it being used in that way in distribution?
Well, we're waiting when we actually put the film out officially. We really want to give it to the NGOs who are lobbying around the midday meal scheme. And, for the most part, the program is really good. It's the biggest food program in the world. When I was researching, there were a lot of people who I met who were like wonderful and working very hard to create the safe space for these kids for nothing in return. But then there's, I think, a lack of like an inherent accountability in the design of it. So there are a lot of NGOs who are lobbying, and I'm not like an activist, but I can recognize that there are people who are already dealing with it that could actually use the film as a tool to spread that awareness. So once we do distribute it, it's really my aim is to just give it to them and use it as any way they like, and even just within academic circles and stuff, because a lot of my intention in like writing it in a certain way was also like, this like like the violence that we are kind of used to just like scrolling through our phones sometimes gets reduced to like figures, or sometimes the way a journalist puts a camera during, if you just like place a camera and you look at the people this has happened to, or they just take it into the hospital to, these people look expressionless and helpless. So there's a sense of this like facelessness of like masses that are like suffering things like this. So I kind of just wanted to make them into specific people without glorifying them or villainizing them. And I think, that I think the film has succeeded in that a little bit at least. So we really just want it to be used for, so that, people just don't forget about it. It's happened since we made the film too, poisoning.
Yeah, I mean, it would be. When I saw the film, I thought how extraordinary it would be if we could show Bittu before seeing a feature. I know that the auditoriums have opened and cinemas are slowly opening in India, but they will soon open.
Yeah,
but it's an extraordinary film, and it's short enough to be seen before a feature. That could really,
that would be great.
hit home in a certain way, and I hope the government sees it, because it can
me too, yeah.
It can really be useful in waking people up. It's very rare, to see a film that captures you in the way Bittu does, feels extremely real, and yet as a filmmaker, I understand it's also cinema that is constructing this reality, in a very electric way, but also it brings about change, if you see it and if you wake up to it. So that's what I love about what you've done, and I'm so pleased that at least the award business world has woken up to recognizing it, because and it just gives me such pleasure when I'm a member of the voting member of the Academy, when I open up my Academy app and I see Bittu, literally little Rani, next to Tilda Swinton, and next to so and next to Almodovar, and all of them. It's just so deserving of that attention, because it's a wake up call in the most charming, electrifying kind of way. Thanks to this lovely Rani and how both of you and all of you have made it feel so incredibly real and so incredibly. It doesn't lecture me. It just takes me in, and that's a beautiful thing. And I know how tough it is to do that. And we have another question: is what was the hardest part of making this film, and the favorite memory on set?
It was really hard. Like there was the first 2 days. The first day when we asked the kids to like do the take, and I had like tried to not rehearse the scenes with them as much as I could. Like there were lines that they knew by heart, but I didn't want to block everything out because it was taking the life out of it. Yeah. And the first 2 takes, Shreya just looked back at me and we both was just like scared.
How are we going to do this?
How are we going to do it?
How are we going to make it sizzle?
Yeah, and then I think then slowly, like organically, we just realized that the thing was that we knew the material really well. We had so much time with it. And I had my own shortlist. Shreya did her own shortlist. We worked really hard to marry them. But so we knew like the rules we wanted to follow visually, but really on set we realized we can't keep going back to a shortlist. We just have to work in relation to the kids.
Yeah.
So I think it was like a very organic process of realizing that the strength of that situation also was like I had to just take as much advantage as I could of this relationship I already had with them. Like, sometimes they would just do it for me. Like, she was my biggest allies on set. So I just had to be really close to them to be like, you're just doing it for me. Like, we've done this 100 times. And so I had a lot more, like, I gave Shreya a lot more responsibility than I think it happened like, I don't think I would have relied on any other cinematographer in that way, because sometimes I just had her to take care of covering the scene. I had to keep staying with the kids in front of the camera and then kind of making it happen. So that was very unconventional for me, at least. Like, I didn't have access to the monitor in like as much as I would have liked to, you know what I mean? So that was hard and weird, but Rani was the best part. She had a very specific relationship and chemistry with each person on set. Our producer, Mary Evangelista, they didn't even know how to speak in Hindi, but Rani and Mary would just have their own vibe. And Shreya and Rani had like a very different, relationship with each other. Like, Shreya would be in an easy rig all the time, with the on her back, and Rani would just be like, hey, Nagraj, like, just like, calling her with her own pet name. They had like their own chemistry. So it was important to like tune the noise out.
And it wasn't a normal set. Like, there was something quite interesting that the first few hours, I remember when, of course, we'd got like 5-6, light boys from Delhi, and there was like a different kind of, set of group of people, but they couldn't understand because the production designer, the director, actor, everyone was on their fours, crawling around, trying to pick up the kids, kiss the kids. So they were like, what kind of a set is this? Like, what is going on? Like, there was no formalities initially because we couldn't really follow normal kind of rules and formats of being able to actually get some magic on the screen. So it was quite lovely to see everyone having a great time. I mean, remember when those some of the behind the scenes images, I think, are really incredible and quite refreshing to see everyone crawling on top of each other, like just
it was really, shot. Yeah. It was also just great to work with Shreya because we hadn't even had the time to realize that we were making a movie together. So to, have someone like I feel like we're very close, but also like in that way it was such a new dynamic between us that at the time we didn't have the time to process it. But when things were really working and we would just look and smile at each other, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And you the one the favorite memory. Can you share something with us in terms of the children? What they might have done when you finished shooting and you were suddenly, it's such an adrenaline rush when one is shooting, especially for the children. And when you're gone, how was that separation? It was very difficult for me with the kids I've worked with in several films.
Yeah, I remember the last scene. The last scene was hard because it was the last scene in the film and we were running against the light and the younger girl was just tired. She didn't want to she didn't want to be still in front of the camera, and we really needed her to for the shot that we decided. And so Shreya and I were like we redesigned the shot a little bit, and then we were just like, didn't even tell Rani really, but I think she understood that we're reworking the shot and you basically have to do this whole thing by yourself. So she and I was a little panicky, I'm not gonna lie. So I started like losing my temper and I was like, because I thought like, shit, I'm not gonna get the last scene, it's not gonna happen. And Rani just kind of picked up on it and just would do it over and over again. And it was like literally, I think the last shot of the set where she walked away and threw the putty across and she just has this look on her face, with like, we had one single light on her and we just knew we got it. That was a really good moment. But it was, I think of the wedding procession scene with like a lot of fondness because I spent 2.5 months with these people and their community. They'd been so generous and we just got to like play our favorite song and dance like it was a wedding, for like 45 minutes. And it was really nice. I went back the next day before leaving and like spent the afternoon with them and we all cried. It felt like, it felt like I was getting married and being sent off to someone's house and I had like people coming behind the car. It was really tough. I haven't seen them since I made the film. Neither of us have. It's really, I miss them.
You must return and with a portable, screen and really have a big community screening. It would be very important and extraordinary. Just one last question: was anyone like an editor looking at the footage while you were shooting it, or you really shot and then went back to a city and started editing?
Yeah, Shreya would look at it.
I just what we were getting, what not, it was nice to look at the rushes at night to be able to actually see what we can fix the next day or what we need more, because we only had the equipment for 6 days. We couldn't afford it for the 7th day, so we had to get it. The last shoot that Karishma was talking about, there was no chance to come back and shoot it the next day. I remember. So that stress was definitely there, but it was incredible to be able to do that and have the luxury of watching it and staying in the same room and looking at it once in a while together. So
that's great. Yeah. That's the new age, digital age, where you can do that. In my when we started, there was nothing like that. So you really had to make sure without seeing anything, and that's a tightrope that especially with kids, you have no idea whether a shot sometimes is useful or not, and suddenly you have gold in your hands. It's wonderful. So do you have any advice for young filmmakers and how to show your own voice in your films? To you, I suppose.
I take all my advice from Shreya, so she can take this one.
Come on, Shreya, speak wisdom.
I'm just working at it, I suppose we just have to keep doing it and not be scared to fail, because that'll just be helpful once you fail, and just keep at it, really.
Yeah. I always say that filmmaking is a disease, and either you're sick or you're not. So if you are sick, you have to realize that this is what you want to do, and it's extremely tough. You have to take a lot of, it never gets actually any easier. I am just, still struggling about, with what I'm doing with the next thing and trying to make it as best as I can and afford it and whatever it is. So you have to choose. In a way, it's you have to choose. Or filmmaking, I was going to say, has to choose you to take the stamina, to take the rejection, and to really, I think, feel the joy when you've made something and when you've really captured people's lives, as really Karishma and Shreya, both of you have with Bittu. So I commend you for capturing that and for bringing it to the world. And for bringing also this extraordinary high and low, this extraordinary danger, seriously, that so many who don't have as much as we do, that they have to face in the simple act of going to school, Yeah. And one more question. I was really fond of the character portrayed by the teacher. It felt really personal and delicate. Was there a thought behind it? There is. But also to talk a little about the actor who played him so beautifully.
Yeah. Saurabh Saraswati was amazing. I knew he was, after Bittu, he was like my favorite character in the film, because I had written him in a very what was on paper felt a little bit less dense than how much I had already put into him in my mind, because he was just for me, this very young teacher who had come into the system of education with a lot of heart and with the right intentions, and was just jaded by the system as well, and had just was always trying to do the best for these kids, but he was also limited by his own experiences in a sense. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't find anyone who fit it in with that kind of heart and sensitivity. And Shreya mentioned Saurabh, and I watched a bit of his work, and I had one conversation with him, and he was just lovely. And he came on set. We didn't have the luxury of doing too many rehearsals. He came and played with the kids a bunch and all of that stuff. But he was just so he kind of dwarfed his energy also, in a sense that he was at the same playing level field as all these first-time performers, but also silently leading them through scenes and talking to them offset. He had a lot of his own. He made his lines completely his own. I just kind of told him that this is what I really want with each line, and we would like go and break down the script. But he made his words his own. Like, at some point when he comes into the kitchen to speak to her and like demand an apology, and he's like, Jhansi ki Rani. And that was like it was like something else, like Bittu, something else. But he kind of like, and it also kind of got like this reaction in her that she was also reacting to her own name. So it was so many things like that where he was just so beautiful to direct. I had such fun with him, and Shreya and him also obviously had worked together. So I feel like the way the camera looks at him is also with so much affection, because was the only real adult, like an authoritative figure in Rani's life that she was willing to learn from. And
I felt like that who kind of already, who we could have also to some degree let him be, and find his own space because there was so much going on. So definitely they needed somebody who was a part of the team really, instead of the actor, and that was really helpful because he almost felt like he was very much a part of the crew at times. He would give his hand to possibly anything that we needed. So that was amazing to be able to have that.
Bolly Spice magazine asks that the final shot with Rani, one in which she holds her friend's hand, and then the anger and devastation on the road. How did you get her to that space? You've answered it in part. They would love to know.
I think the best I could do at a point was just like, it just lives inside Rani. Like, I've seen her be very angry when she's misunderstood, or when she thinks she's been wronged or not being heard in a room. It's just like she's got such an expressive face that it just is so present in her already, So I realized like the best I could do on set was just keep referencing back to these incidents or people in her life that make her feel like that, and be like, you remember when he said that to you, or like when you felt like that way. And by that, because it was like the very last moment we shot that scene, the last scene, we had already had 6 days of filming behind us. We had gotten to this point where I used to be like, when it was time to roll, I would look at her and be like, Rani, where's Bittu? And she would like change. I said, oh, that's too much, 30% low. And she would like bring it 30% low. I said, it's too low, bring it a little back. She was like totally in sync, She did it. We made her do that swinging thing a couple of times, and it was all in one take. We couldn't break up that shot.
So it's kind of moody. Suddenly you go very daylight space into this like one headlight of a car, and it's at night, and it kind of becomes moody. So that really lifted the mood as well. The scene.
Yeah, but she knew. She also had the thing of like between takes, if I said I was too angry or a little bit more, or just like, don't be angry, just wait for a reaction. There was nothing happening on the other side of the camera, but she was just pull it from somewhere and portray it beautifully. I didn't talk about death, and I didn't really have to explain, now your friend is lying dead on the floor and you're looking for help. She just knew these feelings of anger and loss and like demanding attention in a room, like kind of demanding to be heard. So those are things all that she's lived more than I have, to be honest.
Rani takes care of her siblings. I mean, she has like 1 3-year-old, 2-year-old, the amount of experience a 6-year-old gathers, with all these emotions. I mean, it's incredible to be able to see that. So to be able to utilize and how she could pull off what feeling from where, I think a lot of that work was done before we even arrived on that hill, So it's just lucky we found each other.
Yeah.
So that was great.
Did you know when you saw her, Karishma, that this was it? That it was going to be Rani?
Yeah, I was just so... I called up Shreya and I was like, I don't know how this happened, but this kid that I wrote in New York is just sitting over here 20 minutes away from location, and also is so much more than I had written. Like,
that's
I think the strength of the film is when Rani is just being herself. And it's not when she's speaking the lines that we wrote. It's not when she's doing anything that I wrote in the film. It's really when she's the expressions in between objectives that she knew she had to hit. It's just all her. Like, and I keep trying to make her understand she's changed all our lives, like, I don't know if that many people have ever seen my work before. And she's completely a small strength and responsible for that.
And it's only the beginning. Everyone is so interested. There are more questions coming in. And the next one is, how much of what you shot made it into the film? And were there parts that you didn't expect to include that made it into the film?
Yeah, I actually cut a lot. There were some really nice moments that between the teacher and Bittu, that I had to kind of get rid of. Shreya and my favorite character, the shopkeeper, had his little moment that we had to let go. I fought for it so hard, where he's like a good guy running the store and like seemingly on the edge of the world, but he's more interested in his YouTube channel that he records on the weekend, and we just let him kind of riff with Saurabh, and he just like started singing the song that he was recording. He's like, yeah, my weekend was really good, and I worked on this, and I went into Delhi and I recorded the song, and have you heard the song? The song goes like this, and he started singing like a Kumar Sanu song, and we just loved that moment. But we had to let go of a lot of our babies.
But why let go? I mean, for your own sense of dramatic structure, or was there a rule that you had to make it 12 minutes or whatever? Did you have
I tried to cut it to like a length for a long time, and then I was like, this is just not the kind of film I can adhere to, like a limitation of time. It was more like, I think when I was editing it, I was like, man, I think this is the last feature I can make, because the problem with it was like the first 5 minutes were breathing like a feature, and it was just taking too long to get into it. And it just wouldn't work in terms of the escalation that I was comfortable with on paper, so like any editing process. So for the first couple of months, I just cut it, and I had a lot of help from my co-editor, Colin Elliott, who at this point, like, I couldn't deal with the material, and he did a beautiful job of just taking it off my hands. And, he doesn't even speak Hindi, but like fell in love with the kids in the same way, and really found the moments I basically refined for the rest of the month, And so we found a structure where we felt like, okay, so now this is what it should be without all the fat. And this is what is actually working in terms of pauses and momentum and stuff. And then it was all about like fixes, how to make this version better for the next 6 months.
There's a question if the script changed significantly over the course of production, or did you stick religiously, is the word, to the final draft? I think you've answered this in terms of that it was structurally written, but then improvised in several ways when you met the characters. But speak on this. Thank you.
I mean, it didn't change that much on set, but it changed a lot when I started working with the kids the 2 months before shoot, because I would just come back and keep changing, making it a little bit more specific to who they were. I rewrote some lines because like I knew Rani now. I knew like the little girl Renu who played Chand was very young, like 5, almost 6 when we started filming with her, and she wasn't in school at the time, so she was like lacking in a lot of social skills that Rani already had, because she was like already used to interacting with other kids. Like in the script, Chand was supposed to be just better at English too, and like doing like, there was a scene where they're like enacting like very enlightened kind of dialogue scene, like, why didn't you have the apricot cake and stuff like that, which really looked nice on paper, because a lot of government schools do that. It's like very archaic, like anglicized English that they're teaching these kids that is like of no use in their world. So Chand had this whole dialogue scene in front of the classroom where she was like, Dad, why did you go to the mountain? And so that she just couldn't learn. So I just had to like, I filmed it, but it didn't make it into the cut. And then stuff like, the look did, yeah. And then like, I knew I always wanted to end with like a sense of admiration and hope with this kid. I didn't want to end with that image of the bodies. So I didn't know what the scene was going to be. And this was just like the thing where she's swinging something in the end was something like Rani and her friends used to do. They would just take plastic bags and tie like a flat light stone at the end of it and just swing it because it made this like formidable sound, and then they would just like hit cars and people on the street with it. So I just like, incorporated that into the film. So there were a lot of specificities, but for the most part, it stayed the same.
Life is sometimes infinitely more powerful and funnier than fiction can ever be. Is there anything that we might have missed, Karishma, that you want to bring to the fore? with this?
No, I mean, just that I am so happy and proud this film is doing so well. And I just wish I could bring everyone who's responsible for every bit of work in each frame. I can't, but there's so many people who've made this film with me. Like, I can't take the responsibility by myself, especially Shreya and Mary. It's been, I don't know. And of course, Rani. Like, I feel like the worst part about it is that we haven't been able to celebrate together. Yeah, and then also just thank you, Meera. This is just bizarre and amazing.
Yeah.
You were even speaking to us about this film.
It's wonderful to see it, and it of course brings to my mind so much of Salam Bombay and how I began very similarly from that region, and somehow have continued with Queen of Katwe and other films. But always this, it's sort of set up in me this thing that I didn't realize would become my style, which is working with real folks, working with real people facing the camera. You might have a few actors with them, but creating a world that feels so rooted in where it is, and yet it's a structured script and screenplay, and that alchemy that you have really created in making a story that is so important as well, but also so charming and funny and original, because Rani is, and she gives us so much. It's just commendable. So I thank you both, and I hope and know that you will be doing beautiful things later on. May the Oscar come to you, but even if it doesn't, the film has come, and the film is really what matters. And I really, really congratulate both of you. And thank you for the journey ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.